My life is my sovereign. It is up to me to define the purpose of my life, and I can think of no greater purpose than to dedicate my life toward justice. But justice isn't just about law and order. Justice is about equality, and it's about fairness. Justice doesn't just happen, justice needs a voice. My name's Kieran Adair, and today I'm here to talk about justice, politics, and change. I thought I'd start by sharing a story. I just turned 20 when I made the decision to move out of home, and I found a place on Caroline Street in Redfern. For those of you that know the area, that's called The Block. And I moved my stuff in a couple of days after Christmas. I grew up in St. Ives on the North Shore, and I know I would judge me too. But even though I'd gone to a public school, and even though when I was growing up I spent a bit of time in this city, it wasn't until I moved to Redfern that I realized just how sheltered my upbringing had been. 3 days after I moved in, I woke up to watch my neighbors' houses being demolished. And some of those houses, although they were on paper still abandoned, were still being squatted by residents that were either unable or unwilling to move and leave their family homes. And they were being knocked down to make way for new mixed residency developments. Over the coming weeks and months that I lived in Redfern, I saw young Aboriginal men routinely harassed by police at Redfern Station. I saw the suburbs, elderly and poor, become increasingly marginalised as the new rich moved to Redfern, and I saw my peers driven out of the area by rising rents and the increasing difficulty of being young and finding work in the inner city. It was here that I first saw real injustice. I was lucky enough to be, at the time, working for a local newspaper. It's called City Hub, check it out. And working there, I had a lot of freedom to decide what I wrote, and I decided to use that as a platform to shine a light on these issues. And after working there for a couple of months, I left to work on a political campaign, and as a result of that, was lucky enough to get a job working for one of the MPs that we helped elect. And while I was working in Parliament, I had a chance to really refocus my energy on the issues that I was passionate about: police abuse of powers, youth employment, and youth justice reform, and sustainable development. The experience taught me a lot about policy development, but it taught me even more about policy change. Specifically, that real change isn't just something that happens in the corridor of powers, that real change can only happen when people and communities across the country demand it from their government. We saw this in the donation reform that passed New South Wales last year. We saw this with the creation of a national disability insurance scheme, and it's my hope that in the coming months and weeks, or the coming months and years, we're going to see it in the protection of a carbon price and the protection of a national broadband network. I'm sure many of you can relate when I say how depressed I was waking up the Sunday after the election. I remember friends that I have in the Young Liberals under Howard saying, "Oh, Kieran, at least he's not Tony Abbott." Julia Gillard, despite her policies on welfare for single parents and marriage equality, navigated a difficult parliament extremely well and passed some reforms that I think as Australians we should all be proud of. Miss Gillard wrote the following in The Guardian a few weeks ago, and I thought I'd share it here today. "Our election victory is the only measure of political success. Surely our national story is written by more than just statistics on election night. Our national story is shaped by what endures from a government as well as what's rejected. No great reform has happened overnight, and no reform can be attributed single-handedly to one leader or another. The seeds for many of the policies that are only coming to light today were planted years, if not decades ago. From the NDIS to Dendicare to a carbon price to protection of our state's national forests. These were campaigns started by and fought for in communities around the country. Change doesn't come from the halls of power. History shows us that the only thing that will ever change the world are small groups of committed people spending their time and energy building change around the country. Now we face a great challenge, as many of these hard-won reforms are wound back in front of us. Just yesterday it was announced that in 6 months this country can no longer have a climate change policy. It's been announced that Abbott's government will have no minister responsible for youth, science, water, or a range of other major policy areas. That this government plans to cut funding to higher education, militarise our northern border, scrap the NBN, and commit Australia back to the technological dark ages. And on top of that, our pride at having our first national female Prime Minister has been replaced by the shame of only having one woman in cabinet and being last in the world in that regard. But the hard-won reforms of the past are not just ours to take inspiration from. And nor can we let the current circumstances of Parliament distract and depress us from the road and challenges that lie ahead of us. The farmers and workers, statesmen and students, mothers and fathers that left us these legacies deserve our homage, but it's also our responsibility to protect the reforms that they spent their lives working towards. I look around this room and I'm inspired. I look around this room and I see future leaders of industry, of community, of art and politics. I hope it's obvious from my speech where my passion lies, and my challenge to you is not to dismiss yours, but to commit your life to working toward it. Justice is about more than just who wins government. Justice is about protecting the environment. Justice is about fair rights for the disabled. Justice is about housing, employment. Justice is about the way we treat Indigenous Australians and those who come to our land seeking shelter. And justice is about every child having equal access to education and the legacy that we leave for future generations. It may take years, it may take 3 years, it may take 10 years, and it may take an entire lifetime. But the only way this country will see justice on the issues you care about is if groups of regular people organize their friends, communities, peers, teachers, and parents, and they demand justice from their government. Thank you.